We finally have a new update about HBO's upcoming Game of Thrones series, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. As you all know, HBO and author George R.R. Martin have been developing a new show about the adventures of Dunk and Egg set roughly 90 years before the events in A Game of Thrones. Now, the new series is based on his Dunk and Egg novellas The Hedge Knight, The Sworn Sword, and The Mystery Knight. Those are the novellas that will be adapted into the first 3 seasons of the show. As of right now, they're hoping they will be able to release its first season before the summer. It's exactly what we all need to hold us over until HBO is ready to release their 3rd season of House of the Dragon. The long wait won't feel as bad now that we're going to have another new Game of Thrones series to discuss. I want to show you what the author said about the new show because he revealed some exciting new information, as well as some never-before-seen photos from the set. He said after Belfast, the next stop on our summer travels was Ashford Meadows, where I'd heard there was a tournament going on. No way was I gonna miss that, so off we went. Yes, I am talking about the newest Game of Thrones show. It's an adaptation of The Hedge Knight. There are 2 more after that, The Sworn Sword and The Mystery Knight. They have all been collected in a book called A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. That will most likely be the title of the show as well, unless we go with The Hedge Knight. That's still under discussion. Now, filming wrapped not long ago, and our showrunner Ira Parker and his team are now in post-production, and they're hoping to release the show sometime next year. I'm hoping it will be in the spring, but that's just a guess, as no date has been set in stone yet. The Hedge Knight is a novella of about 30,000 words that is much shorter than the massive novels that make up A Song of Ice and Fire. It was written for Legends, a landmark original anthology edited by Robert Silverberg back in the 90s. At the time, A Game of Thrones was the only one of my Westeros novels that had been released, and while it had done okay, its sales did not come close to matching the other authors who worked on the anthology with me. I had no idea what I would write when I accepted Silverberg's invitation. A Westeros story, certainly, that was the concept. It could not be a sequel, not without spoiling things I had in mind for A Clash of Kings and the later volumes. I thought I could do a sidebar perhaps, a standalone story featuring one of my supporting characters. Maybe someone like Robert Baratheon before he was king, or Barristan Selmy, or one of his brothers of the Kingsguard, maybe the Sword of the Morning. I thought I could write about Robert's rebellion, or maybe something set in Old Town at the Citadel. I mulled over all these different ideas, but in the end, I decided to go back even further, to a time of Westerosi history I had not yet explored at all. It was virgin territory, and the setting would be a tournament. As many of you already know, I'd already featured a tournament in A Game of Thrones to be sure, but that was a sideshow of sorts. I wanted to make this tourney the center of my novella. I did not think any of the other writers in Legends would be doing that, and that was how Dunk and Egg were born. Now, it might be a shocking surprise for some of my longtime readers, but I actually delivered The Hedge Knight by the deadline Silverberg had given us. If only he could have done that for The Winds of Winter. We may never see him make a deadline ever again. He went on to say, by the time I finished the novella, I was in love with Dunk and Egg, and I still am. I have written a lot of stories over the decades and created a lot of characters. They're all my literary children, some more than others, but Dunk and Egg were special. I mean to write the rest of their tales as well, in my copious spare time after I finish The Winds of Winter. In fact, George R.R. Martin has said he would like to write at least 8 or more Dunk and Egg novellas in one of his other NotABlog updates. If he doesn't finish writing The Winds of Winter before Dunk and Egg releases its 3rd season, he might have to shift his focus to the novellas in order to avoid the same mistake that was made during the making of Game of Thrones. I bet he wants to make sure Dunk and Egg will have an ending before the show adapts all 3 of his novellas. It will be interesting to see what he does whenever that day arrives. Now, he goes on to say, heading up to the shoot, I was anxious as I was eager. Night of the Seven Kingdoms is a smaller show than either Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon, with a much smaller budget, but I really want it to be great. Most of the narrative is set in a field, surrounded by tents, and we would not need the massive sets that the other shows featured, but we don't want it to look fake or cheap either. And the costumes and heraldry and the fights all had to look great. The 3 days I visited were gray and rainy, so there was mud everywhere, but the lists were so real, they were exactly what we needed for Ashford. Far from the big cities and the great seats of power. As in Ivanhoe, multiple jousts could be run at once, rather than having one contest at a time, as in A Knight's Tale, or the tournaments in Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. Now, despite the drizzle and mud, the excitement on the set was incredible. Everyone I met seemed to be in great spirits and they loved what they were making. And Dunk and Egg, who are Peter Claffey and Dexter respectively, looked as if they just walked out of the pages of my book, and the chemistry between them was perfect. The rest of the cast and crew are wonderful as well. If you look down below, you'll see the scene where Dunk first encounters the Fossaways, Sir Stephen, and his squire Raymond. And here's a photo of me, this time with Tamsin Crawford, who will be playing Tansel Tootal. She will be one of the central figures involved in this show's inciting incident. For those of you who don't know, Sir Duncan will defend her from one of the Targaryen princes, and it's what leads to one of the most amazing moments in Westerosi history, known as the Trial of Seven. And he also shared a photo of Ty Mickle, a writer on Dunk and Egg, as well as House of the Dragon. She has been a big part of all the other Game of Thrones shows HBO has been developing. He went on to say that she most likely knows more about Westeros than he does. And I can't help but think about the crypts of Winterfell while looking at this photo. I'm not exactly sure where we're going to see these statues during the first season of Dunk and Egg. I'm assuming they will be at Ashford Meadow, since that was the set he was visiting. And lastly, he said, "I could go on and on. Tansel's dragon puppet was very cool as well, and I can't wait to see it in action." Now, the various Targaryen princelings were not working on the days we were there, but I saw some scenes with the Laughing Storm, and he was outrageous and fun, and Baratheon through and through. Ashford was one of the highlights of our travels, and a few weeks after I got back home, I was able to see a rough cut of the first episode. I loved it, and I can't wait to see more. Now, I must say, I was not expecting George R.R. Martin to be the one who released our first photos from the set. In all the years I've been making videos about Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, this has to be the first time we haven't seen any major leaks. We haven't seen a single photo or video from set. HBO finally must have done a great job at hiding their filming locations. We've only seen the few images from HBO and now George R.R. Martin himself. Hopefully we're going to be able to see the first season within the next 8 or 9 months. I don't think we're going to have to wait that long considering they're only making 6 episodes in the first season, and they don't have to artificially add any dragons or massive armies. It really sounds like this show will give us exactly what many of us have been asking for. There's going to be a larger focus on the characters, as well as some much needed comedic relief. One of the main things House of the Dragon was missing are the funny conversations Game of Thrones did so well at the very beginning. They've basically already finished the first episode. It's exciting to hear how the author loves what he's seen so far. I know I'm certainly excited to see a new Game of Thrones series from HBO. I know we're all anxious to finally see a much different story from A Song of Ice and Fire. While I do love the dragons and White Walkers like everyone else, I'm also ready to see a new story with a different focus. I've always said I could easily watch a show that was solely about the adventures of Arya and the Hound, Brienne and Podrick, or even Tyrion and Bronn, as they are wandering around Westeros. Now, I love the big action scenes as much as everyone else, but the moments I enjoy the most are when the story is much smaller, and we get to explore the relationships of characters who aren't your everyday heroes. That is exactly what Dunk and Egg will give us. I will let all of you know whenever I find out any new information about Dunk and Egg, Season 3 of House of the Dragon, The Winds of Winter, or any other Game of Thrones series in development. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to be the first to know whenever I release a new video. There are a lot more heading your way. Once again, I have to thank all of you for watching another video. I hope all of you have a great day. I will see you again very soon. Bye.